Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. My name's Phil. Joining me as usual, I've got my partner in crime, Rohan. Good morning.
Howdy, how's it going?
And joining us all the way from Romania is Florin. Good afternoon.
Hey guys.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabocasa. Easily and securely access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. The configuration is done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML.
Okay, Rohan, I'm going to do it. We haven't done it for a while, but here we go. What has the Internet of Things been broken this week? And I think the biggest one to come out this past couple of weeks is Best Buy is closing their Insignia range of devices. So if you have, or if you've been to Best Buy in the past couple of years, they've been selling these smart devices under the Insignia brand. You could get some freezers, fridges, smart plugs, even a camera. They were all Wi-Fi based and they were all cloud dependent. So this week, Best Buy has decided to close their cloud service, which basically renders most of these products just now normal fridges, freezers, or light switches. So there's no smart component anymore. The exception, of course, is if you're using the Wi-Fi camera module. That is actually now completely, it's just a paperweight. There's nothing you can connect to anymore. So I think we had the State of the Union just last week here for Home Assistant, and Paul has really, drove it home once again, about making things extensible and open. Once again, this is the thing, don't buy cloud-required devices. And I don't know, do you reckon we're going to go in, is it just like, I remember at the start of the year, Rohan, we sort of had, I think the first 3 or 4 episodes were all just, cloud devices breaking.
Yep.
I wonder if it's getting into the end of the year, people are busy with Christmas shopping, so, that's when they're starting to announce these sort of things while people are distracted, maybe. Do you think that's a thing?
I don't know. I think it's less that, and then I'm a little disappointed at Best Buy, to be honest, because, you hear a lot of stuff with Best Buy going, hey, we've got smart home. Actually, there's some Best Buy stores here where they have full-out smart home displays, right? Like just dedicated.
Totally.
It looks like it's like a store in a store.
Yep.
And it's all smart home stuff and all that. So it's a little bit surprising to see Best Buy moving there. And now I don't know. I struggle with this one because Insignia for me. So it's, as far as I knew, a lot of Insignia stuff was OEM'd through somebody else, right? So even when it comes to fridges and stuff like that now, I guess they were adding their own logic to the stuff. But it's unfortunate because there's no backup plan, right? I mean, a smart fridge is obviously more expensive than a normal fridge.
That's right.
And so on and so forth. So it's unfortunate that this is what it's come to, because you spent that premium and now it's kind of bricked, right?
Yeah.
I think it's also a danger of non-core market stuff, because Best Buy sells a lot of stuff and this is just one of the things they sell, so they're not really heavily invested into. Yeah,
exactly. So that's a good point as well, right? So I guess, but even when it is large brands, and forget Best Buy, even larger brands, a lot of times you see them going, very first episode this year was us talking about Logitech, right? Breaking a bunch of devices. These guys are they started with mice and all that stuff, but today, if you ask me, they're more of an IoT kind of company, right? Building smart remotes and all that stuff. So
pretty great one by my view.
yeah. I don't know.
Their products. I don't know. It's a shame.
It is. But unfortunately, that's not all.
Yes, right. And as you said, there was no, like you said, it was a white label. The Insignia brand was just all, using something else in the back end. And most of those devices would be like a Tuya device. And in the past couple of weeks, Tuya actually just had an outage. So if you have any, there's so many brands there in each region, basically if you go and you've got a Wi-Fi smart switch or something, it's a good chance that it's actually going to be a 2-year rebranded device. So they had an outage. AWS in Europe had an outage, and during that time, there was no voice control, there was no linking or anything of that. So if you had a 2-year device, once again, you were, for those 4 hours or something that they had the outage for, you were pretty much had a dumb device. But the good news is for those people, and as Reddit user Obi2 Kenobi, which is a great username, pointed out, if you have the, and I think it's called the Smart Life brand, there's actually a tool out there that is called 2-year convert, and that will install Tasmota on those devices for you. There's no, I don't believe you need to do any soldering or anything like that. It's all over the air. So if you have a Smart Life branded product and you want to remove the cloud dependency, you can have it act as a Philips Hue bridge, and you can have it communicate with the Amazon Echo directly. That's a good alternative there.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm less worried about this one. I think if I buy a cloud supported product, to some extent, I get it. Right. And this one's out of Tuya's hands.
There's bound to be an outage.
Absolutely. I mean, can they have done better to design their cloud stuff? Sure. And hopefully they learn from this. But I mean, AWS also has pretty decent SLAs in the sense that they will shell out money if your service is down, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would hope that Tuya learns from this and kind of spreads it across rather than just in Europe.
Yeah.
Have different availability zones and have different, whatever, right? So.
And finally, Ecobee are disabling notifications for outages. So maybe this is a bad sign for that platform if they've got so many outages there. It's costing them too much money to notify you each time. So they're going to stop sending those notices to you via email whenever they suffer an outage. So it's probably going to add a bit of confusion, I think, to some customers. But it's probably also going to remove a lot of bad publicity now that no one's going to know, at 3 a.m., at 4 a.m., did the outage go out for an hour while everyone was asleep? They probably won't notice. But yeah, I thought that was interesting to see as well. Like, I'm just going to disable those notifications? Like, sort of seems a backward step.
Yeah, that's a weird one. Hopefully at least they have like a status page that's constantly updated or something.
Yeah. I believe someone mentioned that they're using the standard status page.io service, and I think they may have exceeded one of the master plans, like one of the big plans for business, in terms of, how many notifications you can be sent. So it'd be interesting to see how they're going to handle this moving forward.
Yeah, that's an odd one.
As a smart home user, I think you definitely don't want less info. That's why you got into the whole smart home thing, to have more info.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point.
And the last thing you want to do is reset the whole device thinking, what have I done wrong? Why isn't it working? To find out that, it's because their cloud services are down and now I've already reset it, so I've got to go and reset it again.
Yeah. But let's talk about something a little more positive now, Phil.
Happy times, happy news.
That's right. So Home Assistant had its second State of the Union meeting in Amsterdam. So there was a ton of stuff to talk about. First of all, it's funnily enough, this is kind of like the global world, right? So this is the first time Pascal and Paulus got to meet each other. So that was, I thought that's kind of funny.
It was, really cool. And then Pascal was up on the stage as well, which was cool to see, like Paulus and Pascal both delivering, new topics, new things to come. So that was really cool to see as well.
Yeah. But with that said, one of the things that we've gotten a few emails about, I know Paulus gets this pretty much every day. Home Assistant version 1 is slated for early 2020, hopefully.
So we're working on Home Assistant 1.0. And I was hoping that we today could announce Home Assistant 1.0. We realized that, we're not there yet. And so we didn't feel comfortable releasing Home Assistant 1.0 today. I don't want to make any hard promises, but my estimations is that somewhere in the first half year of next year, 2020, we should be able to get there.
So Paulus reckons next half of 2020 that they will have a 1.0 release. What do you guys think about that?
Good. I mean, it's I know there's a lot of effort that needs to get done between now and then to get it. So
Yeah.
if he's confident about it, and I mean we've had this conversation, Phil, with him both on and off the record about 1.0, and exactly what he said in that clip is basically exactly what he's told us too, right? It's look, if we're going to label something 1 dot something, it has to be usable, right?
Yeah.
For the masses. So I respect the decision that he's been holding back, or the team has been holding that back. You know, I'm hoping that we get 1.0 sooner rather than later, but obviously I'm more hoping for a polished product.
Absolutely.
I think the main difference between 1.0 and points before this is YAML. I think in the past few releases, I've been using less and less YAML. So I think if they get it to the point of almost no YAML or no YAML for most users, then that can be considered 1.0.
And I think that's been something that they've been aiming for. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of YAML and I don't want to say no breaking changes, but far fewer breaking changes.
Yeah.
I think they want to standardize everything, get everything in that right direction, where platforms are all built a certain way and stuff like that. And I believe there's still some older ones that are still need to be converted to kind of the newer models using whatever specific categories, right? So I think once that effort's done, I think they're pretty well off.
All right. Well, something that I thought was really cool in the announcement was that Home Assistant now supports 54 languages, including right to left. So Home Assistant really is going global. And I always sometimes when having those shower thoughts, I think, I only speak English, so I only get, the English version of the internet. So I can only imagine how many other communities and all that there are out there of Home Assistant, in other languages that, I just don't get to experience because I don't speak the language on the internet. So really cool to see that 54 languages are there.
Yeah, if I remember correctly in the past, there's been, during some of the October hackathons, there's been language support that's been added.
Yeah.
And but 54 is pretty amazing. That's quite a few.
Yeah, so I think in the last Hacktoberfest, they did a really big push, and I think most of the front end can now be translated. Before there was random strings here and there that couldn't be translated, but I think there was a big push in the last October to really just get as much translated as possible. So really cool.
Yeah, clean a lot of that stuff up. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people know this, but a lot of people have also been asking for an official Android app. That is now in beta. So right now it's only a web view, but hopefully there'll be quite a bit more that's coming.
Florin, I think we were talking offline before, and you were saying that you have installed the beta. Was that right?
Yes, works beautifully. I mean, yeah, it doesn't do for now anything extra than the previous web view, but it's easier to manage. You can use a different browser as a default without having some ridiculous icon because of Chrome and stuff. I mean,
yeah.
It gives you more flexibility. I enjoy it being an app.
Yeah, I'm really excited to try it out.
Yeah.
And I guess on the same vein, the iOS app is coming out of beta. I think, Rohan, you've been testing the new version, I think it's 2.0 of the iOS app that's got Siri support and all that.
Yeah, I've been using it pretty much since day 0, since the day it came out, or like maybe a day or two after. I love it. And I've said this time and again, I think it's fantastic. And between Robbie was calling it like the 1.5, right, which was kind of like the halfway release, and then the new generation of the beta app, which is a 2.0. Between then, there's been quite a bit more stuff added. I don't use most of it, to be frank, but I think there is some cool stuff that actually detects it talks to the health app, which basically helps the phone, or helps Home Assistant rather, triangulate which direction you're walking in, so on and so forth. So let's say I'm leaving work and I start driving towards the house. Now, Home Assistant itself can know that I'm driving that direction. So based on that, you can make a little more intelligent automations, things like that.
Yep.
And are there other ways to do it? Absolutely. But I think it's cool that you have that level of granularity. And if you don't want that, just don't give it the permissions, right? It's fine. And you can still give it just location permissions and it's fine. But I don't know. I just thought like the little things like that were huge improvements in the iOS app.
And I think it'll probably even be out by the time this episode is out and the new release is out. So it's very close to being officially launched on the App Store. I'm just waiting for Apple approval.
And shout outs to Robbie and the team that have been kind of building this out. So thank you.
Definitely.
You know, there's some more good news that came out of the State of the Union. Frank, who everybody knows and loves, joins Nabukasa.
Frank have written on his website, "If I could describe my dream job, I would be being a full-time open source developer, helping the world to become a better place for dedicating my time, knowledge to create innovative open source software, allowing everybody on this earth the privilege to enjoy things for free." Yeah, well, Frank, I will say welcome to Nabukasa.
So Frank's going to be working on a lot of to do with documentation and cleaning a lot of stuff up. So I think having a dedicated resource on that is going to be great to see.
And that's fantastic. I mean, Frank has given back to the community so much. And I mean, whether you realize it or not, you're probably using one or two things at least that Frank has built out in Home Assistant. So
he is the App Store.
he really is.
He is the App Store, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. So he's. I mean, I can't say nicer words about Frank. I mean, the guys put out so many awesome integrations and so on. So I'm happy for Frank. So
yeah,
and congratulations, Frank, if you're listening.
Yeah,
absolutely,
definitely.
Congrats, man.
All right, and so here is one of the shocking ones from the State of the Union. Home Assistant is teaming up with Stanford University to integrate a new private assistant called Almond. So Almond is basically like an Amazon Echo, Google Home sort of competitor, I could say, but it's designed to run either in your own private cloud, so an instance, a server running on the internet in your own infrastructure, or it can even run, if you've got a nice big computer or home lab at home, Rohan, this would be you.
Yeah.
That you can run. There's basically three parts, and so I could go ahead and try and explain those three parts, but here's Paulus who's going to just explain all the moving parts and how they integrate now with Home Assistant.
With Almond, there's three different parts. There's the App Store, which kind of have like the different skills that can be added to Almond. There is the neural network that converts sentences into like a mini program. And then there's Almond Server that will actually execute this program. And so the way it works is that Home Assistant will send its sentence to Almond Server, and including the context of how the sentence was said. Almond Server will send this to the neural network, which converts it to a program. And I've shown like just above the neural network box, you can see like a small piece of cryptic text. And this is kind of the program it sends back to the Almond Server. And as you can see, the sentence of the user has been converted into a program, but this program doesn't know anything. It's very generic. Yes, it talks about the user wants to turn on a light bulb, but only, it doesn't know which light bulb. It doesn't even know which light bulbs the user has. Only Almond Server knows. So Almond Server will take this program, it will see which skills are referenced. Any skill that is not available, it will download it from Thinkpedia. These skills can go to the internet to fetch extra data for you. It can go to the New York Times or other news sources, Twitter. And then all these things Almond Server will use to generate a response and send it back to the user. And so Almond Server, you'll have three different ways of running Almond Server. There's a HasIO add-on. You can use a local installation, and you can use Almond Web, the hosted version by Stanford. And then the neural network, which is pretty heavy to run. You can either run a local installation, or you can run a version hosted by Stanford.
This is really cool. And I do like that they somehow managed to keep this under wraps. The ability for people to start customizing their own smart assistant. I know with my Amazon Echo, there's, I would like to be able to have more granular control. I know there's routines or whatever the equivalent is in Amazon Echo for me to be able to customize those voice commands, but to be able to really have a full control and not necessarily have to give up my privacy to Amazon, it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's actually kind of cool because I'm looking at the website right now, and so they talk about programmable notifications, right? So I mean, one of the examples that they give is, hey, alert me when the price of Bitcoin is below $3,600, right? And then it actually goes out and it goes, okay, notification from let's say some time passes. So notification from Cryptonator, okay, the price of Bitcoin is 3,500, 514, blah blah blah, and so it's actually really intuitive. This is kind of cool. I think the way they stitch and stuff like that, just at least looking at their website now, this is the first time I'm hearing about Almond, but is through this. But this is it is very cool.
Yeah.
I would replace this with my Amazon Echo or whatever, right? So
I love the idea of being able to define your own wake word without calling a company every time.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Imagine Rohan, a world where we wouldn't have to be careful what we say, right? Where we could just say names and not have to worry about needing to edit it out later because we're going to activate so many devices.
And at least, that'll be nice. Well, I think what'll make it harder is with Almond. I mean, we might say somebody's name. So let's say I name my assistant Florin, and every time I talk to Florin, hey Florin, and it's gonna be.
Yep,
that's true.
But no, this is definitely very interesting.
Yeah, and I think on the same vein, and based on this, Almond natural language sort of thing that they've done, Home Assistant's really going to take it to the next level. And I'll let Paulus describe this one too, because this could be a way for, and what we were talking about before, to sort of start removing the reliance on YAML a bit.
So now this is the automation editor. So when you open the automation editor, we'll see a new dialog. And in this dialog, we offer you to hey, just describe in a sentence what you're trying to achieve. And you can just say, for example, turn off the lights when I leave home. And so when you send this, we're going to actually talk directly to the neural network. We're bypassing the Almond server. And we get back this ThinkTalk program. We interpreted this ThinkTalk program, and then we see that there's certain missing information, because as you know, the neural net doesn't know about your home. And so in this case, it asks you hey, which person do you want to trigger on? And so okay, it's going to be me. Then, okay, which light do you want to turn on? And we're going to add support for areas and stuff, but for now we're just focusing on lights. So I want to turn on the ceiling light in the living room. Now when I click Create Automation, you can actually see the name is set to the sentence that the user said, because there is no better description to a user what the automation does than its own words. And if you go down, you can see that the trigger type is already set for when the person, Paulus, arrives in the home zone, and then the action is already set for the ceiling to be turned off. And so with this, we'll be able to, easily create automations that you can later then tweak.
That's actually really cool in that you'll be able to just type in a sentence, turn on a light when I get home, and Home Assistant will be able to populate the YAML for you.
So, and I guess they're relying on Almond for that then.
Correct, yeah.
Interesting.
You wouldn't even need to have you wouldn't even have Almond as set up as a voice assistant. They would just use the neural net component of that and then go ahead and use that to create the automation logic behind it.
Wow, that's cool.
Right?
There's no nicer way to say it. That's amazing.
Most of the time, when you want to do an automation, it can be enunciated quite simply. I mean, just turn on the hot water if it's more than 27 degrees and so on and so forth. I mean, it's something which you can easily say in a sentence what you want, and it's not that difficult to process. I think it's basically a bunch of if clauses, but if it can do all the syntax for you, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, right? If you think about trying to design an interface to create these automations, you've got Node Red where you have to click and drag lines and all that into different nodes. You've got, or the current automation editor, we've got a series of drop downs and all that, and you have to select the device that you want it to happen and put in all the conditions and stuff.
Yeah.
The fastest way really is this, right? Like just type in what you want it to do and let Home Assistant try and, pre-create as much as it can for you. Like, it's genius.
Yeah. I think for me at least, building automations is one of the more painful tasks in any smart home platform.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
And to your point, Phil, that's kind of across the board, whether it's Node-RED or using the YAML automation tool, or you're using the web one or AppDaemon or whatever. It's just automations are painful, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is a great step forward, and I think if they can pull this off, this would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have a proper play with this and just type out what I want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also useful for best practices because sometimes you might want to do an automation and there are several ways in which to implement it, and you don't necessarily find the best one, but you find something, whereas this one could already know what the best one is and use that.
That's a great point, actually.
Yeah, and start creating consistency as well, so that, it's easier to share, and people that are sharing the same thing sort of, start having the same sort of layout to their automations as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's always more than one way to skin a cat, right? So to your point, Florin, there might be, I achieve the one automation in 10 steps and you might be able to do the same thing in 2, right? So whereas, obviously that is more efficient. So that would actually be pretty, I didn't even think of it from that lens. That's a great point. So let's kind of digress a little bit and talk about 0.102 and what's coming out in this release. So a couple of new features. So there's a new way to link integrations with HAS and OAuth 2. So what that means is if there's integrations that use OAuth 2, it's really easy for it to actually plug in with Home Assistant now.
See, account linking, there's a problem because a lot of providers, a lot of brands, because API is like an afterthought, it means that like you can only link or get the data from a cloud API. And the most popular way of integrating cloud APIs, there's like a standard, it's called OAuth 2. And OAuth 2 is a great standard for security-wise, but it's not great for a decentralized setup as Home Assistant has, where everybody runs their own installation. OAuth 2, if you want to use it today with, for example, Fitbit, it requires you to create a developer account with Fitbit. Then you have to edit configuration.yaml to enter like some data about your developer account in Home Assistant. Then you have to also make sure that your Home Assistant installation is externally accessible so that Fitbit can redirect you back once you're authenticated. And this sucks, because this pretty much, based on the simple mode that we described earlier, this would exclude anything that uses OAuth 2. And just to give an example of a big company that uses OAuth 2, is Google, right? So if we would want to integrate your Google calendars into Home Assistant, it wouldn't be possible in simple mode. And that would be like, nah, that's stupid. So we came up with a solution. And the solution actually had multiple steps. The first step is that we wrote documentation on how to create Python libraries that talk to OAuth 2 servers. Because the handshake authentication, there's some work needed there. And once that was in place, we actually created a new helper in Home Assistant, including templates, so that people could easily add these helpers to their integrations to allow OAuth 2 account linking. And this is great, but this actually allows users only to do still the local one. So you still have all the problems that we described above. However, then we now added a central cloud account linking service. And so with this service, we have actually created developer accounts. We have set up an external accessible URL, and we will route authentication tokens from the initial linking back to your instance. And this means that once you authorize, after that your instance will talk locally to the servers in the cloud, and the account linking service is no longer necessary until you need to refresh authentication. And this account linking infrastructure is very important. And so this account link infrastructure in the cloud, we're going to make available to everybody for free by Nabucasa.
So Nabucasa is going to be providing all that free. There's no Nabucasa subscription required. So basically they'll be like the man in the middle that will just accept those OAuth tokens, which is actually really smart, and it sort of reduces the need for people to have to expose ports on their router and all that. So that's really cool. Like, great idea.
Yeah. So if you use the Somfy component today in 0.102, that'll actually be the first component to ship with this integration.
Yeah. Also, something that's really cool is a new scene editor and scene services. So Paulus announced this at the State of the Union. Basically, it's really cool. So you get 2 new services in Home Assistant if you want to do it programmatically. So I think Paulus had the great idea about the notifications. So like just being able to set up your house as you have it, like as you want it, and then being able to call, all right, create scene, and it creates a new scene based on the states in what your lights are right now. I think this is something that scenes have been missing for me. I've never used scenes. I've never understood why scenes existed. Not only in Home Assistant, but in all other platforms. I get the appeal of it, having everything at the right state and stuff, but creating scenes in Home Assistant was a pain in the bum, to put it lightly. Yep. But now just being able to, set all the lights up, I want this light green, I want this light red. You could easily do a Christmas theme and then go, all right, create scene, and there it is. It's saved in Home Assistant, ready to go. And then having the ability to just have it roll back to whatever else. So you could have a scene created on the fly. Like, if you need to shut everything down for 5 minutes while a notification's on, then have the scene come in and put everything back. It's basically like the Sonos snapshot system. It's really cool.
So that's kind of cool. So I was actually going to say that it's almost like you're snapshotting, or taking a snapshot of current state and saying, hey, this is now going to be scene A, B, C, D, whatever, right?
Yep.
That's and I'm guessing that's like a proper full-time scene, like it's stored as a actual scene.
Yeah. I'm assuming that there will be, and I haven't played with it yet, but I'm assuming once you do that create scene, it'll be stored somewhere, maybe in a scenes.yaml file that can't be edited, but yeah, should be reusable.
Right. That's actually kind of cool. I've actually been looking at scenes so that I could have a single scene for it. I call it my good evening script or whatever. So like, before sunrise. And I just found that it's if I have it as a scene, it's easier for me to pull it into my Amazon Echo, because then I can just call one trigger rather than saying, okay, turn on this light, turn on that light, turn on that light, turn on that light. Right. Whereas it's just a single pull, or from the Echo, it's just a single trigger. And then and
then Home Assistant does the rest.
Yeah, exactly. So at least that's where my head is at, but I'm sure there's more efficient ways to do it. But
I think it's useful as a guest mode as well, when you have people over and you want to dumb your house a bit, so that things don't happen and irritate people.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's nice too, because I don't need to be like, okay, I want this light at 30%, this light at 25%, and then test it and then go, okay, you know what, I actually want it at 37%, and like, it saves a lot of that, right? So you can kind of walk around your house and set whatever state you want. And hey, is this good enough? Yeah, great, snapshot, call it, right? And I think that might be that's also some advantages there. So that's kind of cool.
I think we've all been in a situation where we walk around the house and think if at 37 or 40 is better.
Yeah. Honestly, Florin, I've as I was setting up my whole good evening script thing that I was talking about, that was actually something I was doing, and I was like, okay, let's try 30, 35, okay, 40, oh, too much, okay, go back to 35, and it's like it's. I know it sounds really silly, but I'm telling you because I've been there. Right. And but yeah, so some other noteworthy updates: device automations. So it's a bunch of love that's gone into that. So a whole bunch of new device support has been added to the automation builder. We're talking about that. We're talking about conditions and triggers for fans, climate, locks, vacuums, and so on. So that's great to hear.
And if you are using the Amazon Echo, there's actually been a whole bunch of improvements done around media players that are exposed by Home Assistant. So you can do things like seeing like the state of playback reporting. And I think there might even also be the ability to control playback. I haven't tested it myself yet, but it would be cool if, you've got some obscure local area controlled only media player receiver, something, And now that's exposed to the Amazon Echo via Home Assistant, you can actually have complete control over it as if it was like a Sonos device or something like that. So that's really cool that Home Assistant is now being able to bridge the gap as well.
Yeah, no, that is very cool. So Florin, I mean, let's kind of talk about you.
Hey.
Hi.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your home automation journey.
Well, it started a lot more recently than for other people that have been on your show. Only about 3.5 years ago, I first started using this service, which was provided by a telecom company here. It was they were offering a smart home hub that I later found out was simplified, reskinned Vera. So Z-Wave, and worked pretty well. Unfortunately, their device support was quite limited because basically they sold like 10 products, and those were the 10 products that you could add to the device, which, in retrospect, I guess was a pretty good thing because it kept people from messing with it too much, especially since it was a very underpowered sort of hub. I think it had 64 megs of RAM or something ridiculous, like a slow router, basically.
Yeah.
So I used that for a couple of years, and then hearing about the fact that it was a reskinned Vera, I was like, okay, let's get a full Vera and see what it can do. And that was a really cool experience. I loved it. It was a very good device. Right up until it did something which I found unacceptable, which was that my door sensor would sometimes not trigger, like maybe 5% of the time, but it's the front door. I know it's not a high-tech security system, but that is really not cool. And it was a known issue. Basically it was the way in which they handled the Z-Wave network just sometimes caused this sort of problem to appear. So I started looking for alternatives, and I came across my new religion, Home Assistant, last summer.
Right.
Yeah, and basically at my work, I used to do a lot of things related to integration. So when I found this platform, which basically integrates anything with anything, I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. I ran it from the beginning on a VM. Initially, it was in Hyper-V on Windows, which proved to be a poor choice because you can't pass through USB things in it. So I then went to VirtualBox, which I've been using ever since then, and it's impeccable. I especially love the snapshot functionality, which dug me out of many graves in which I had inserted myself with Linux.
Sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you're running that on a Windows server, and then having and then running the virtual.
Yeah, I bought a used Windows desktop PC, just Windows 10, not Windows Server, and installed VirtualBox. And the decision was actually also to have it in Windows because I like Blue Iris, and it's a Windows only app for the
for the cameras.
Okay.
I tried using some Linux things like Motion Eye and stuff, and they were just I couldn't get my head around doing everything I wanted to do with them. Whereas this one, you pay $50 and you're done. It works perfectly.
Right.
Yeah. And I got around my house a little bit of everything. So the whole point of this, actually, the reason why I started was because we had a kid on the way. And we started thinking about various ways in which we could improve our lives using these things in this context. So initially, the point was using lighting that could be accessible from the phone, because when you're let's say when the kid is sleeping at all hours of the day and night, when they're very young, you want to be able to modify these things without getting out of bed. That's definitely a major thing, because you move, the kid wakes up, chaos ensues, so so yeah, that was the initial thing. And then I just really got addicted to the whole data points that are offered by sensors. So I just started putting them all over the house, temperature sensors, motion sensors, although the motion sensors are a bit useless inside the house because we have 2 cats as well, so
Right.
Yeah, there's always some motion going on.
Yeah, so that the cats do trigger those motion sensors.
For some situations, I just pointed them at about, I don't know, like 2 meters high so that they can get triggered by opening a door or if an adult walks by, but not by the cats or, yeah. And, that's been what I've been doing so far. I actually also have a Raspberry Pi as well because, one of the big things that I wanted to get done was presence detection. And I just looked at many options that exist for this. And, I came across Andrew J. Fryer's exceptional monitor script. And I've been using that on a Raspberry Pi separate from the server because it seems to work best with the Pi's Bluetooth. I mean, I had a Bluetooth stick on the server, but it was not as good. So I just installed it on the Pi, and I use it with a couple of tile key fobs on our keys. And it works impeccably. I mean, it even has a bit of a magic feel to it for the kid because, like when I'm at home with my daughter, and the way the tiles work is that they get triggered when you're sort of walking to the front door, like a few seconds before you walk through the door. And I can always say that, hey, mommy's home, just before she walks through the door because I get the notification.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. There's all sorts of other things I got around here. I set up a tablet recently with fully kiosk browser. Because since my daughter's 3.5 years old, she can't read yet. So the main Home Assistant UI is not the best option for that, obviously. So I set up an account with floorplanner.com and arranged the plan of the apartment. And I actually really like that particular website because if you have a lot of IKEA furniture like I do, it has the actual furniture, like the exact ones in it. You just look for it by name,
Nice.
Yeah. So I set that up, and it's been going really well. Just one thing though, I really would have liked some option to use a clock on the tablet as a screensaver, and I have not been able to get that going with it both when it's charging and not charging because Daydream, right, on Android, it needs to be charging or docked.
I think so. I use fully kiosk on Amazon Kindle. And for the motion, I think because it's, once again, the Amazon's locked down, I think the only way, like, the motion detection works is it blacks the screen. It doesn't really lock the tablet as well. I don't know if you have the same problem. And because I'm guessing that if it did lock the tablet, then it would go into, like the default Android lock screen, and then you can't get a nice clock or anything like that. So I definitely could see, it would have to be in fully kiosk, a nice black clock that just scrolls around the screen or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to offer it themselves, I think, in fully kiosk browser. I use a Nexus 7 2013 myself. The reason being was that it is the only tablet that I know of that has wireless charging, and this meant that I can mount it to a wall with 0 holes, basically just Velcro and tape, and it works really well. And of course, being a stock Android doesn't have issues. I mean, I just disabled lock screen, But at the moment, I'm just using fully kiosk browser's wallpaper screensaver support. I put in some pictures there and it scrolls through them. Ideally, it would have to have a clock, I think, because it's the only piece of software within the tablet that can ignore whether it's charging or not charging. So if it could offer that, then I would have the clock. But otherwise, it doesn't seem to be possible, at least not without going through some horrible things in Tasker or rooting the tablet.
Yeah.
And things like that. Just, sometimes it's not worth it,
Yeah.
So it's getting to that time of year, I guess, and Christmas is just around the corner. I want to hear, have you got a Christmas mode set up for your house? Or what are you going to do this year for Christmas?
Ooh, what is it? Yeah.
Well, last year when I set it up, it was basically the Christmas lights on the tree connected to a smart plug alongside a script, not a script, I think it's called something else in Google Home, whereas I could just ask Google Home to start Christmas mode, and it would open the smart plug so that the lights would go on, and it would start playing a Christmas song, I think White Christmas or something, I don't know, one of them.
Ah, nice.
So basically... sound and lights. And this year I think I'm going to kick it up a notch because I got some light strips and things in the meantime. So probably going to add those to the script in Home Assistant so that they all get triggered when somebody says start Christmas mode.
That's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah. So I think for mine, and I think I automated it properly last year so that from the 1st of December, the house just automatically kicks on Christmas mode. So the automation is all there all year round, but only in December it activates. So when someone gets home, and if they get home before 9 p.m, the Sonos speakers will start playing a Spotify playlist of Christmas tunes, which just happens to have that Mariah Carey, song that's famous for Christmas around this time of year. That's the first song, so that always plays. So you walk in and that immediately starts playing. And I have a whole bunch of Philips Hue lights around the house. And usually during the year, I have those Hue lights Home Assistant will randomly every 10 minutes change their color. But for Christmas, they'll actually go on a loop, and they'll just loop between red, green, and blue for Christmas. Yeah. So, and they'll just go around the house and loop colors. And then, of course, Christmas tree, the light has to be plugged into a smart plug, so they turn on when we get home. So that's my Christmas automation.
Wow.
Sweet.
Rohan, what are you doing? Anything crazy?
No. So the reason I've been so quiet is so lately. So after I've moved into this place, I've actually got my first Christmas tree December 27th or something last year. So. It was on sale, whatever. It's one of those things I just never got around to doing.
Did you not know Christmas was coming that year?
Yeah, it's like I never got the memo. No.
Right.
So this is actually really good because we've been talking about kind of, hey, when do we set it up, whatever. And we're thinking of setting it up in the next couple of weeks before we leave.
Yeah.
And it's just so it's going to be one of those things. So this is actually all good feedback for me. So I'm just learning right now, going, what can I do, right? So definitely, I am going to stick a Wemo plug for that in there. And but outside of that, I think, even the music part I might do, but I don't know. Outside of that, I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, well, if anyone's got any other suggestions for us, feedback at haspodcast.io. Tell Rohan to jazz up his Christmas a bit this year. Give him some ideas.
Yeah, tell me to stop being so lame.
I love that one of the things about this podcast is whenever as a Home Assistant user I think I've gone crazy with some functionality, then you have some guest that comes on and just blows it out of the water. It's like makes you look sane by comparison.
I keep saying it's like it's funny compared to most of our guests and stuff. My stuff is so basic, right? Like it's like, I've got lights, I've got a couple of doors, that's really about it. I got a bunch of echoes and stuff, and so, but yeah.
One automation that I really like, since we were talking earlier about automations, is what I like to call a slasher mode. Basically, I set it up so that there's a script that checks the doors and windows at night if they're open, and if any one of them is open, when I say goodnight to the Google Home speaker, it basically runs the script and tells me if any windows are open, or if not, wishes me a good night without Michael Myers at the window.
That's actually a really good thing. So that's been something it's on my to-do. I just haven't done. Is there something specific where you give that feedback back to? I think so. For me, I'm using the Amazon Echoes, but I'm assuming hopefully it'll be somewhat similar. I have to actually look into it, but like in terms of getting that state to say, hey, this is open, blah blah blah, right?
I have it set up wholly in Home Assistant, and basically it's a script that has conditions, and depending on the result, it says one thing or another, So I only have one option in the Google Home setup, but the option is to run the script. And once the script runs, it'll have a specific output, which it will tell me.
Okay.
So what happens if everything's okay? It's like you say, for example, let's say you say, good night, Google. does the house say, good night back to you, and that means everything's okay?
It actually says all your doors and windows are shut. Have a nice evening. Have a nice night.
Nice. Okay. And if they're not?
If they're not, it says that it actually. I set it up as a simple condition, whereas if any one of them that I'm monitoring is open, it tells me that one of your street windows or bathroom windows is open. So please close it. I didn't set it up to tell me which one it is because basically it's only 1 out of 3 that would be likely. So it's not a big trek to close them if I forgot.
Yeah.
But I wanted to set up feedback even if it's all right because then I know that it ran.
Yeah. The last thing you want is did that actually work or not?
Yeah, exactly. Positive feedback is very useful because even though it might be repetitive, you know that things are okay with the automations.
Sure.
And one other script that I like very much is based on presence. It as you enter the house, so we have 2 tile key fobs, and if any one of them is triggered, that is inside the house, all our indoor cameras turn to the wall, thus ensuring very analog style privacy for anybody that might have hacked them, because you never know, So it's set up so that if all the tiles are outside the house, they turn towards the house, and if they're all if at least one of them is inside the house, they turn to the wall, offering occupants privacy.
Nice. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, for me, I think this is that last barrier in terms of being comfortable enough to have cameras in the house. If they were being able to be turned away to a wall, I think it would just give people a bit more assurance that they're not being spied on, because and this is why I don't have motion sensors in my guest bathroom or guest toilet, because sure, they're just motion sensors, but I don't want someone looking at them thinking, is there a camera in there, right? What is this guy doing?
Yeah.
So I don't have anything crazy like that, but for having cameras being able to turn around and physically face the wall, I think that would give people a lot more assurance that they're not being spied on.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of my hold up with cameras inside the house as well, right? So I actually don't personally. I don't have any cameras inside my house for that exact reason, and it's almost like even when guests come over and stuff, I don't want them to feel uncomfortable, right? Going, forget the washroom, just even if it's in the hallways or whatever, or in the kitchen, or I don't know, like to me, it's. I myself, even though, even if it is like an offline camera or whatever you want to call it, right? It's still like not a cloud connected one where things are recording locally and things like that. It's just, for me, it still feels like a bit of a breach of privacy, personally, but I'm sure my guests would feel the same way, right? Being like, okay, so I think that's for me, my hold up, but I really like that concept of just turn it to the wall if somebody's home.
Yeah, and I have them very visible locations so that you can see it immediately if it's pointed at you or not. You know what I mean? That's another thing, because if it's in a place where you don't normally look, then it's you get used to it and you don't remember if it's turned to you or not. But they're pretty straightforward and visible in black and a white area, so that you know that it's that it's pointed at you or it isn't.
What brand of camera are they that you're using?
Oh, just terrible V-Star cam, $30.
Oh, really? and how are you driving them? Are you using Blue Iris? Was it that you're controlling them through?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Blue Iris. So no cloud.
Okay, and that's got the full pan tilt control from Home Assistant as well. Or do you do that through Blue Iris?
No, it does not. So in Blue Iris, I have full pan tilt control, but in Home Assistant, I had to use a workaround because they are on VIF compatible cameras in theory, which is pretty straightforward standard. But for some reason, they pan tilt did not work in Home Assistant using that. So I used one of the many wonderful workarounds that exist in Home Assistant, which was the rest sensor. So I just captured what was going on when I moved them and Save that as a Rust
nice.
script, and that was it. This is what I love. I mean, with this kind of method, it's just really anything is possible as long as it's not very encrypted or using a different link every time. Then you can just about do anything.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome.
Well, one other little thing, which is just more for fun, but actually is surprisingly useful, that I've set up for the kid, is that there's a text-to-speech notification that goes on in the morning in which it says, Nina, it's time to go to preschool, or in the evening, Nina, it's time to go to bed. And it's like, it's surprisingly useful because they will negotiate with you, but they can't really negotiate with the speaker, So it usually is very useful in getting them to do this and getting her to do this. And especially the first few times that I used it, she was not getting out of bed, and then the speaker would come on and say this, and her first reaction was, "Oh my God, Mrs. Speaker told me to go to preschool." It's Mrs. Speaker. Yeah,
that's really cute.
That is cute.
Yeah.
That's right. Like you can't negotiate with Mrs. Speaker. Like she says, you have to go to bed. Sorry, you got to go to bed.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's adorable.
Yeah, and even though English is not her first language, she enjoys having some interaction with the speaker. Like she can ask for some music, she can stop the music, So that's pretty cool. And this is actually one other thing which I really enjoyed using with Home Assistant. So I have a Google Home Mini in the living room, but obviously its speaker is total shit. I mean, you just can't use it for music properly. So I set up Chromecast audio that is connected optically to my home theater system, and linked these two so that whenever I ask for music on the living room speaker, it automatically gets sent through to the home theater. And using a Harmony Hub as well, that's why I was saying earlier that I just love Logitech products. Using a Harmony Hub, I can actually change the input of the AV receiver every time I finish watching something. So let's say I normally watch a movie and the audio input is from the Blu-ray player. When I'm done with that, it'll automatically know to switch it back to the Chromecast audio as the input, so that whenever somebody wants to put on some music, it's on the correct input for that.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a great use case, actually. So is that just driven through, like, are you just monitoring what's being played or what the sources are on through Home Assistant and then flipping it that way? Yeah.
Yes.
That's great.
That's a great use case for Home Assistant.
Yeah, just you're always using the best speaker that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I gotta say it's been such a wonderful experience, and I was thinking earlier that Home Assistant is not so much a platform as it is a hobby, much like gardening or something, because there's so much you can do. There's always something more you can do to it. You feel like zero limits. I mean, there's always, and it's even a lot of things that you can do without buying stuff. I mean, without buying more hardware, you can just use it in such innovative ways that whenever I look at the forums and see the stuff people are doing, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny when so a colleague of mine he came up to me, I think it was last week or week before, and he's like, "Hey, I know you do the podcast. I know you're really into this home automation stuff." He's like, "I've been wanting to get into it a little bit." He's like, "What do you use and how can I get started?" And I'm like, I use Home Assistant. I mean, and you kind of got to figure out what works for you. And he goes, "Well, it's free. I can just download it." It's like, "Okay, I'll play with it." Right. And then if I don't like it, then maybe I'll move to something else. So he fires it up and he's like, "Man, it found all these other devices. I didn't even know I could use those." And I was like, "That's awesome." So he's I think he's really enjoying it as well. But to your point, Florin, it's one of those things where you don't realize how much you can do, and then you start getting creative, right? And it's
exactly.
Okay, maybe what if I get this guy to talk to this thing to talk to, right?
One other thing which I really, really love about Home Assistant is the ability to customize the UI to an extent that it provides you a lot more information that you were not even aware you wanted or needed. Like, I have a conditional card in Lovelace that shows me what what are the open windows and doors at any one time in the house. And this way, it's very easy to see that, for example, one of the sensors is malfunctioning because, like, you see the window is open and you see the sensor shows closed. Now, normally, if you have this in some other part of the UI, it might not jump out at you, but this is where you can see exactly what. There's actually in the forum a monitoring topic, and some of the things that people have set up there for monitoring their various things within the house is just amazing, like pretty much enterprise level stuff,
Yeah. Again, a lot of people go crazy with home automation.
Actually, it's funny how some bloopers can show up in the situation, right? Because I bought a couple of those Xiaomi temperature and humidity sensors, the Bluetooth ones that you can put on the wall. They have a little display. And, I put them up, everything was well, and then a couple of days later I see, why is this showing me a different reading in Home Assistant than I can see on my wall? And what had actually happened was that my kid had switched them from one room to another, so they looked identical, but they were giving the other reading.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's important, I think, to have physical security, not just, a software security, because one other thing was that I have all my stuff set up to UPS, and, it's working really well. And then one time I was at the mall and I got all these notifications that everything was down, and I thought, what the hell, what happened? So I later found out that my kid had enjoyed the green button on the UPS so much that she pressed it, basically turning it off. Because the UPS is supposed to work if your power is out, but not if you turn off the UPS.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, something should be kept under lock and key,
Yeah, you got to cage off you got to have like a power room now.
Hey, at least you got an alert that it went down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I use HealthChecks.io for that with a cron job, and it works beautifully because since it pings from outside your house, then you always know, even if everything is down, that it's down.
Yeah. Rohan, we are going to be back with another episode, but you're going to be in Hawaii, so you're going to have a nice little break.
That's right. That's right.
So we'll be back. I think we usually come out just at the same time as the Home Assistant release, so I think our next episode will be a couple of days after the release, so don't stress, we're coming, we'll be there. And I'm guessing that's going to be the last episode for the year as well. It's going to be pretty close to that Christmas time, so we'll have one more episode in this. Florin, thank you so much for taking the time and talking about your awesome setup and having so much fun with all your Home Assistant journey. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
All right, cheers. Or mahalo, Rohan.
That's right, mahalo.
Yeah.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.